You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That rockin' bit of tunage means it is time to rock out once again with everyone's favorite bi-weekly source for all things options related. Yep, I'm talking about the old OB, a.k.a. the Option Block. My name is Mark Longo. I will be your host, your guide, your maitre d' here. For you need a table on the Option Block, I'm your man. Of course, if you like what you listen to here on the program, by all means, keep those reviews coming in your platform of choice. It helps new people continue to discover the program and indeed the network in these troubled times, more important than ever. So wherever you listen, your Apples, your Googles, your YouTubes, your Podbeans, Stitchers, Amazon Music now growing there as well. You can do all kinds of different things. You can leave reviews, you can comment, you could like, you could favorite, you could share, whatever you can do on your platform. Feel free to do it so no folks can continue to discover the program. And of course, keep those questions coming, particularly on Thursdays. That's when we open up the mail block. So you guys can get at us there. You know how to find us at Options on most of the major social media platforms. Let's see who we're going to hear from today. First, going out to a quiet, a tranquil hamlet outside Chicago, where we are joined once again by the uncleist of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the program, sir.
Always happy to be here and just studying up and boning up on my 80s theme songs for the big contest on Monday.
Yeah, you've been crushing it of late. I'm still very impressed by pulling that Airwolf out of your back pocket there. You must have Shazam going in the background when we're doing the show on Monday or something, because I'm not sure if Shazam even still exists, but whatever acquired that functionality, because that was a pretty deep pull. And of course, I was amazed no one else got Miami Vice this week, but you crushed that one as well, Uncle Mike. So Uncle Mike, crushing. We'll have to go back and get the scoreboard updated, but I do believe Uncle Mike is at least 2-0, if not 3-0 here in terms of pulling away with this one. We'll have to see what we can do next week to stump everybody yet. You guys have been awesome with your submissions, by the way, so keep those coming. Dallas, I wouldn't have even thought of Dallas, so you guys sending in Dallas and a bunch of other fun ones. Keep those coming. And you know who's not good at that game? Apparently, he watched one day of TV during the entire decade of the 80s. He was too busy watching the OEX. He's the Rock Lobster himself, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com, by way of Carmen Line Capital, by way of a little state called Maine. Mr. Rock Lobster, welcome back to the program. Have you been boning up on your 80s television, sir, in preparation for our next Monday episode?
After I missed the Miami Vice theme song, if I'm not getting Miami Vice from the 80s, I'm getting nothing. I'll never get a single 80s thing.
That might be the most 80s show ever made, so that is a hard one to, if you missed that one, there's no going back. Of course, at least you weren't like Matt, who instead guessed the music video that he was in from the 80s. Which I do believe we found him in that video. I'll have to see if we can share out that screenshot of Matt dancing in the background there on the Sharp Dressed Man video. It's worth the price of admission. Trust me, listen. Pretty sure it's him. It's hard to tell because a little bit blurry and it's a little bit, a little bit funky wardrobe, shall we say. But I do believe I have found Mr. Oratz himself as we head on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, let's get to it. Welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show we break down what the heck is trading, what is moving and shaking and rocking and rolling and in the markets today. And of course, not a lot of green to be found after having just a series of rallies here. It seems like for a while there, all the concerns that we had a couple of weeks ago about coronavirus, Trump getting it, about the economy, everything else we were seeing out there. They seemed like they were mounting. We saw a lot of sell-offs, maybe a little bit of easing, a little bit of profit-taking. And then for a while there, again, we were just back in green mode, up just ridiculous percentages, up over 1% across the board in most of the major indices in multiple sessions. And it seemed like all those concerns were behind us, even though the stimulus, another thing people have been hanging on, was seemed like it was kind of stuck in the water there for a while there. And yet coming into today, maybe the combination of extended stimulus debates and perhaps more questions about what's going on with the pandemic in Europe and other areas, all that seemingly weighing on the markets today. Most of the major indices firmly in the red, giving back a lot of that green has had of late. S&P, once again, the laggard, off about 0.6%. Back shy of that 3,500 level that everyone was watching for a while, at about 34.68 coming into showtime. The NASDAQ, once again, leading the charge in the wrong direction, off about 1.1%. And the Dow, the laggard, off about 0.33%. All this flummox, all this fluff means vol catching a bit of a lift again, up about almost exactly 3 points from last show. We were at about exactly at 25 on our last show, and coming into showtime today was at about exactly at 28 out there. So pretty close to exactly 3 handles. VVIX, of course, all this back and forth means VVIX also catching a bid. As you recall, in our last show, it was up about 7.5 points, and today it's up about almost exactly 7.5 points again. So up about 15 points in about a week out there, up to almost back to our usual upside barometer of 120. 120 now is maybe more of like a middle-of-the-road barometer for VVIX, given, of course, what's been going on in the pandemic. We're at about 119.5, so very close to that 120 level. And our old friend VXX getting back some of that erosion, not a ton, a little bit, so not enough to panic you folks out there who were celebrating its march beyond 22 to the dark side. Back up about 0.5 point to about 22.5. And our old friend VOLQ was talking about it on Monday. That's, of course, the volatility of the NASDAQ 100. Just the at the money, just the facts, ma'am. So if you want skew, look elsewhere. At the money vol over there in all things VOLQ. Check out our chat with Scott Nations a couple of weeks ago, the creator of that product, here on this very show to learn more about it. That's up exactly 3 points as well. It's about 33.25 coming into showtime. So vol pretty much up across the board. Not exactly surprising given what we're seeing out there on the blood red screens. Let's go back around the horn now. Let's start in the order that we went. Of course, let's keep that party going. He has been kicking butt in our 80s guessing game, so we give him pride of place. He is the Uncleist of Mikes. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what's lighting up your tape on this very much not Uncle Mike type of day?
Well, I mean, in some ways it kind of is. It's a pullback, but I mean, we're down roughly 0.5% in the S&P. So I'm really too overly frightened or concerned. And after all, I am Uncle Mike. Let's face it. I've never met a tip I didn't like by any means. But I think what's happening right now is that I really believe that the stimulus is the big news at this point in time. Market doesn't really care about the virus anymore. The market seems to be over it. It seems to me that the market understands that, yes, airlines are going to suffer. Yes, cruise lines are going to suffer. And yes, restaurants are going to suffer and things like that. But the Amazons of the world, the Apples of the world, the companies, the Peloton, the companies that are Corona stocks are going to hold up this market. And that seems to me what the market is thinking at this point. And so it really has the feel that's where we're at. And then if we can get these stimulus checks, well, it's just more free money. And whether it's right or wrong for our economy, well, that's up to the listener to decide. But I do think that if we had stimulus checks, I do believe it would be good for the market. Whether it's good for our economy and society, once again, that's for our listener to decide. But I do think it would be a positive for the market in and of itself. What I think this is a unique thing right now, and that we have not had a market like this in a long time where the markets are going up and volatility is staying up. We're a few percentage points away from all-time highs in the S&P 500, even with today's pullback, or even with today's 0.5% drop and yesterday's down day. And volatility is still knocking on the door of the 30 level. And so, or at least it was up in the 29s today. And so with that, it is a unique market in that you can do a lot of premium selling strategies that you normally could not have. So you can be a bullish premium seller and really get rewarded for it in a lot of ways, meaning you're selling puts on dips, you're going to get more premium for dips than you normally would at these with the market this close to all-time highs. Now, of course, you're going to have more market movement that could go against you much more sharply. But if you're a market bull, then you should be okay with that. In some ways. But once again, make sure you're managing risk in the proper way that makes the most sense to you. So we have that. The other thing that's kind of surprising that I think would also go up or have an upward move if we do issue more stimulus checks would be the precious metals, just because I believe that we're going to have more inflation. And I could see something along those lines happening if we do issue more stimulus checks. Now, granted, right now, it seems to be the focus is on the Supreme Court hearings or the Supreme Court justice hearings with what's going on in Congress. But I have a hard time believing them when they say that there's no way we're going to be able to get stimulus checks out before the election. I have a hard time believing that. I mean, by gosh, this is America. We can print money better than any other country in the world. And I think just maybe not everyone will get their specific check, but how rapid it can happen. Like I said, I have full faith in the United States of America's money printing press. I think we can do that extremely efficiently. So I think that's the big news right now. It seems like the market doesn't really care that much that there's cases surging in Europe, that cases seem to be going up. I think the market seems to be a little bit more in tune with what the death rate actually is, just because of the fact that it is very easy to get coronavirus, but it might not be as bad as people think it is for some people. But let's be honest, for some people, they could die from it very quickly. So I'm not trying to belittle that fact, but with the high numbers, it is a relatively small death rate for those that actually do get it. And with the additional testing that we're having, the numbers are just going to go up. Now, I'm not trying to sound like, oh, it's only going up because we have more testing. Please don't make me out to be saying that by any means. But with more and more people getting tested and then with this virus spreading, the numbers are going to go up. If we open up more places, if we're more open, then there's going to be more cases. That's just, I don't see how anyone could deny that. But I think the issue where the market is concerned is what is the death rate? And on top of that, even if we are having people stay in, it's just going to benefit the big guys getting bigger. I've said it before on the show as well. Let's say that we do have an elongated shutdown. McDonald's is going to survive it. However, Bob's Burgers probably won't. And so when that happens, the people that were normally going to Bob's Burgers, because it's a way better burger than McDonald's, let's say, they won't be able to go there anymore because Bob can't sell his burgers anymore because he went belly up. However, McDonald's would have no problem taking that business from Bob's Burgers because McDonald's can withstand something like this. And like it or not, the S&P 500 is made up of companies like McDonald's and not Bob's Burgers. So ultimately, with the market itself, I don't think the virus is that quite as big of a deal as we initially thought that it might be for the reasons with which I just mentioned. And that is what I am seeing today in the markets.
Thank you for that, Uncle Mike. We now turn our attention to an ever more cynical, ever darker spot of America, the shores of Maine. where when he's not battling crickets and clam pirates, he is turning his attention to volatility and perhaps unleashing his best friend, the stick figure known as Vol Man. Mr. Rock Lobster, what's lighting up your tape on this more Rock Lobster-ish type of day, sir?
It's funny. I told my kids to listen to the podcast. Like, Dad, why do you sound so grumpy?
Do they not know you? Are your children unfamiliar with you?
Well, I think they know. They maybe know me as more fun than that.
Oh, really? There is a fun side of the rock. Okay, let's check out. I'll have to come see that for myself in Maine.
Exactly. It is unknown to our listeners, though. Unknown.
Do they say, Dad, why can't you find the mute button? Do they also say that to you?
Yeah. Well, they know my problem with technology is well known to them. My kids can build computers, but I can't run mine. So anyway. So you look at this and you're like, all right. So basically, like the EU is like the cases are now higher than the US, right? And everything was for a while. It's more cases. But our doctors here, doctors there, probably doctors all over the globe are great. They figured out ways to treat this, which has lowered the death rate significantly. So I think part of the news cycle is like we've got this virus and it just is not going away. It's the biggest pain in the butt ever. I think to modern life because it inconveniences most people. It's super deadly to some people, but for the vast majority of at least citizens here, it's mostly just inconvenient. But it's lethal to a very small portion of the population. So when Mike was saying the market's kind of used to it, I think the market is used to the COVID. The problem is the uncertainty around the economics of COVID, I think, is what's keeping the vol up. There's been a bid for election vol for a long time. It has come down to we were almost flat. The yield curve was almost flat today. So it appears that unless something changes, the high tick for the November vol and at least from the forward vol point of view in November is probably around 29. So we have made, I think, a short-term peak in vol. Unless something radically changes between now and the election, like awful news or something, I think we have like a vol peak. I don't want to call the top in vol short-term, but if the curve flattens and the futures don't go up anymore, there's just that bid for vol is kind of peaked. Just trading it, it's like, okay, nobody wants to pay more than this, so that's it. So at least that's the way I see it. So is there opportunity after the election for the vol to come in? I think so. I'm sure I'm not the only person that thinks that, which probably means it won't happen. But it certainly has that opportunity. As far as the market goes, if we would have had this news in August or June, remember after we kind of had that bid up, we had a pretty significant sell-off and VIX went back up to 40, as I recall. On the last time we had this kind of like, oh, the pandemic isn't going away thing. I believe, we had our spike. We had a pretty good, I'm looking at the VOLQs, right? Kind of nice. VOLQ spike 38% and another 35%. VIX spike, well, again, we had those scares. The biggest scare was in June. Remember, we thought everything was cool, and then it blew up in our face. We got to the mid-40s in VIX. And actually, the recent, like when we had that QQQ sell-off, vol peaked at 38 or 39 there. VIX did so, and we're not even close to that. So I think Europe has a surge in cases. I don't know, again, how their hospital systems are handling it. I have clients in every country in Europe, basically, and I talk to them frequently during the day. And they're like, the cases are going up, but it's not, people aren't dying, so it's not as bad. But people are going into hospitals. So none of that's good news. But as far as our market goes, the S&P 500 is down 0.5%. So I just have to say, you're down 0.5% and you have VIX at 28. Like something's not quite right there with the market reaction. So, and I agree with TOSAW a lot, and I'll agree with them again on this one. The market seems to be a little bit, it's accepted where we are. It sucks. We can treat it, but it's still kind of how exactly does the whole how do we deal with this? Like, how bad is it for the economy, at some point? And that's why the vol's so high. People can't quite decide, because if we get a vaccine and come out of it, off to the races again. So I look at this and I look for opportunities. There are some interesting stocks. Let's say like Gilead Sciences is to its COVID lows. Like when everybody was freaking out, when they had remdesivir and they thought it was a treatment, the stock was in the mid 80s. It's trading $63 today. Not very expensive. I was trading $65, like a week or so ago. So I think there's opportunities in individual stocks in this market. It's been a great trading market. And as far as VIX goes, 20, I think 25-ish was about the recent low. I would be surprised if it got lower than that prior to the election. For whatever reason, the election premium is there. Even as we get closer and the polls don't seem to be really coming, they're kind of saying the same thing. But the vol's not coming in. So anyway, that's what we got. Also, VVIX is now moving to more of the no cycle. November contracts in VIX are real expensive. Puts I looked at like a week and a half ago for $1 are now $2. Actually, they're $1.90 today. The 29 straddle is $8. So actually, it's closer to $8.50 than $8. So you look at that and you go, wow, that means we could see a VIX below 20 after the election. Straddles are usually good indicators of move. Remember, it's statistically, it's kind of the likely move where the ball is. Again, mid-30s or something, yeah, but it's not like blowout on the upside. So again, but this is still a fairly expensive straddle for VIX, and VVIX there is it's printing vol from a live vol is 117. So it's pretty pricey, considering VIX isn't moving a whole lot. And anyway, so I think, again, I'll agree with TOSAW. It feels like a lot of the market move is over. The election is still a thing. And I think one thing holding up the election is the possibility of the stimulus. The fact that Europe might go into a, contract a little more, or people worry about it, that potentially could rush Congress into dealing with the stimulus somehow. So, as far as I'm concerned, the vol move today to me looks, fairly bullish actually, because, VIX like COVID, VIX is up a little bit, but it's not very much, and SPX is down almost nothing. And at this rate, it almost looks like it's going to be green on the day if it keeps ticking up. So, again, traders market, but the vol is priced expensively after the election. And for whatever reason, it's not going away. But I think we did, at least feature-wise, the curve totally flattened out today. So you kind of probably saw a peak in vol, at least again, until something wildly different happens.
No, you're right. Waking up and hearing all that news this morning about how they're expecting a very damaging second wave. They're going to call it a disaster in areas like Poland and others of Europe. You'd certainly think that would weigh strongly in the markets, and we are seeing things weigh strongly, and also perhaps kick things into gear a little bit in Washington, yet that doesn't appear to be the case. So once again, we are living in interesting times. Let's see how interesting these times are from an overall volume perspective. Let's start in the big dogs, the big indices out there. VIX actually doing some paper today. So all this up and down, yin and yang out there, driving a little bit of flow. That's good because the ADV is still pretty anemic. The ADV is about 351,000 contracts. Up a little bit from our last show, but not a ton. And today, as of a few minutes ago, just a tick shy of 300K, about 297,000 contracts on the tape. So actually a pretty decent day's worth of volume already out there, given what we've seen of late out there in VIX land. Many days are a lot less than that already. So almost 300K, not a bad day. SPY a little bit north of 2 million, about 2.06 million. That puts it right about half of its ADV. Its ADV is a tick under 4 million. So the SPY ADV also coming in a little bit since our last show. The X would be interesting. That's a different conversation. The S at about 610,000 contracts as of a few minutes ago. The ADV just a notch north of 1 million as well. So over halfway in S-land. The Qs at about 655,000 contracts. So similar paper for the Qs as the S right now, which is interesting. The ADV in the Qs about 1.1, almost 1.2 million. And small caps through the lens of IWM at least closing in on their ADV. IWM at about 465, the ADV 556 if you want more small cap action, the vol, the skew, all that breakdown. Stay tuned for TWIFO coming up in a little bit later today. We'll get into all that. Got some great special guests joining me to help break down all that good stuff in small caps, but also crude and gold and metals and all the other products you guys want us to break down every week out there. So TWIFO coming up in almost exactly an hour out there. Amazing how time flies when you're having fun. Let's see what's lighting it up here and dominating the tape today in terms of single names. It cost you $1.73 to get into the top 10 today. That gets you to Microsoft. Good old softy, number 10. Number 9, Game, a.k.a. Gamestop. The name that you guys can't get enough of, apparently. We got some listener feedback about that, I think, a little bit later. So Gamestop refusing to die. Also at 173 out there. So pretty much tied for the bottom of the top 10 there. Then we go up to number 8, 191,000 for DraftKings. Kind of a perennial top 10er these days, lurking around there. Number 7, Amazon. Also, usually in the top 10, 213,000. Number 5, Bank of America, 241. Number 6, Bank of America. Number 5, Zoom, 286,000 contracts. Number 4, newcomer to the top 10. We're going to talk about this one in a little bit as well. This is FSLY. This is everyone's new favorite or perhaps least favorite cloud computing name, but they're good for some paper today to the tune of 295,000 contracts. They are on fire today. Number 3, yes, I said number 3, Tesla. What the? Usually it's at least number 2 out there. So it's number 3. Something has bumped down Tesla. What could it be? 561,000 contracts in Tesla. That's a good day for anything else. Ain't enough for number 1 today. Not even enough for number 2. That belongs to the fruit company. Yes, I said it. Apple number 2. How is that possible? 1.06 million contracts already on the tape for Apple. Just a juggernaut every single day. But you know what? Not going to do it for number 1. Can you guess? What is number 1? I wish I had a little Jeopardy music. I play it right now. I'll give you 3 seconds. If you're listening live there or after the fact on the podcast, I'll give you 3 seconds as well. Yes, if you said Chinese electric cars, winner, chicken dinner, NIO. Just blowing the doors off it today. 1.39 million contracts on the tape as of a few minutes ago. It's probably closing in on 1.5 million by now. Looks like an endless upgrade out there in NIO land, driving a lot of that paper out there. So NIO topping Tesla, topping Apple. That's no mean feat these days. Stock that was, $3 beginning of the year, now trading, I believe, in the high 20s. Yeah, about 26, almost 27. Yeah, just a year ago. Actually, not even a year ago. 6 months ago. It was trading 309. Oh, how the Chinese electric car manufacturers have rallied over the course of the past few months or so. Really quickly here on the earnings front, we have a hot week yet again as earnings season kicking off again hot and heavy. So if you're saying to yourself, I need some more earnings vol data in my life, we got a whole new rash of reports coming at you for this new season, this new cycle, courtesy of our friends at Orat's Land. Matt was just on the show on Monday breaking all that down. You know where to go, theoptionsinsider.com. Tuesday we had JP Morgan Chase, Johnson & Johnson. That's an interesting one these days in light of all the COVID drama. Citi, Delta Airlines, BlackRock. Wednesday, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Goldman, PNC. You guys get the drill. A lot of financials this week. Thursday, Morgan Stanley. One of my favorite names out there, Walgreens Boots Alliance. I always like that name. It just sounds like a Star Trek name. And then we've got, of course, Schwab on Thursday as well. Tomorrow we got State Street popping off. And let's see, we got some results reports as well. We had Schwab today before the bell. They were at 37.12. They were pricing in 2.6%, and they delivered about 2.5%. I guess most of the drama for Schwab in the rearview mirror because that TD deal is now closed. So that was kind of the big question mark everyone had. Would they get approved? How would it happen? Seems like that drama is behind them now. So pretty much exactly in line with their straddle out there. Walgreens Boots Alliance. Let's see. They were at about 35.91 going into their announcement. They were before the bell today as well. They were pricing in 6.3%. They delivered 2.3% out there. So good stuff for all things Walgreens out there. My old friend, the Walgreens Boots Alliance. I just like It's like saying that. And let's see what else we've got here. There's a bunch of other names. You guys check it out for yourselves. You got to keep on rolling, though. You know where to go. TheOptionInsider.com to get all these move results reports. All right, we'll do one more really quickly. Let's go to United Airlines. They were 35.61 coming into this report, I should say. They were pricing in 5.7%, and they delivered 4.5%. So a little bit of underperformance, which is what we've come to expect these days. But interesting stuff nonetheless. You want the whole breakdown, what's coming up next week, what's coming up on the season, all that good stuff. TheOptionInsider.com is the place to go. Now it's time for us to go into our next segment. It is time to go into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by TheOptionsInsider.com. It's time for the odd block.
All right, welcome to the Odd Block. Let's kick it off. Let's go to some of these names that are lighting it up out there today. I mentioned earlier everyone's favorite name, at least today, or perhaps least favorite given what's going on in the stock. This is FSLY, ticker symbol FSLY. This is having a rough day today. This is a cloud computing company out there, down, about 25, actually it looks almost about 27% now, just a huge hit. They came out, sounds like last night, and warned on reduced revenue from declining internet traffic, courtesy primarily of TikTok, a few others out there, but declining TikTok volume, driving a lot lower revenue in this name. So they took it on the chin. This is the name that a year ago was trading, about 22 and change. So they had a nice run coming into all things COVID and pandemic, as you might imagine. Pretty heavy cloud usage time. And they topped out just, looks like a few days ago, at $136.5. And now coming into today's show, they are at $90.39. So they took a nice drubbing over the course of the past few sessions out here. And this is probably also emblematic by just the meat on the bones of these puts, Mr. Rock Lobster, because we very rarely do we talk about puts that they were at close to at the money. They were actually $10 out of the money puts that were trading for nearly $10. That's what we got today. We've got 7,000 lot of the DEES 80 puts, so 80, going up for $8.82. Yes, $8.82. Let's see what the market was. The market was actually surprisingly tight for a name that was in free fall, 920 at 950. Sounds like that market wasn't really good for much, though, because they had to get these off at $8.82. So that $9.20 bid wasn't really good for that many puts, which is surprising. You think market makers would be bid for some puts. When things are in free fall, the paper flow tends to be one way, shall we say. And so if you're a market maker, you get a chance to buy some of those bullets back. Not the worst thing, maybe at a pretty impressive IV level. That was at about almost a 93% implied vol. So maybe they didn't really want to buy it there, but still, they had to go a little bit through that bid to get 7,000 off. But it looks like someone crushing that bid, perhaps Mr. Meatball, I should say Mr. Rock Lobster, deciding this far for no farther for FSLY. In this case, it would be the 80 strike and getting nearly $9 to do that. So coming in and pretty much agreeing to pick up the stock at, about nearly 71, which would put it back pretty much in line with, last time it got close to that was 76 on September 11th. And before then, you had to go all the way back to, looks like about middle of June when it was trading in the, actually gapped up from 63 to 69, I should say, to about 7, actually about 63 to 73, almost in a span of a few sessions there. So had a nice little gap up. So you're going all the way back to mid-June prices here and getting a pretty decent amount of juice to do it. So A, is that your takeaway as well? Someone just deciding these puts are super juicy and wanting to crush that bid, or you think something else is afoot out here, sir?
You know what? I find myself saying this more and more now on the show. I have to agree with you. I don't even know what my use on the show is anymore. If I can't find umbrage with everything you say, it's very
it's hard to argue with genius, sir. I understand. It's difficult.
Very disconcerting. And I actually, one guy I like that's online a lot, Twitter, Ophir, I know he's been on the show. He has a lot of good of these growth stock picks. This is one of his. I think he's been long it from like $3 or something.
Yeah, I saw him tweeting something about this today. Yeah, it seemed like this is one of his core holdings recently.
Yeah, but I think he's long it from a lot lower price. But, obviously if you paid $110 or something for it, you're bummed out. But I could see somebody selling these for $8.50. That's pretty good. That gets you back to $70. Because like in COVID land and COVID times, the stock was $17. So I think it does have a pretty tremendous growth. Like these happens with these stocks. I think somebody's just looking for a cheap way to buy in. Below basically kind of, I would say like a mid-June price or something like that. So, good company, like growing crazy, but like all good companies, even Apple, remember when it went from $7 to $350 or $600 to $325 or something many, many moons ago. Feels like a million years ago, pre-split. But here, when you look at this, actually, it's pre-two splits, actually, now that I think about it. Somebody said I think he's just trying to take some stock at a lower level. Of course, me, I'd be a little bit more greedy and just sell some maybe 50 puts.
I was going to say, there's no way you'd sell the 80 strike. You'd be like 45 or something. Yeah.
It is fat, though. I mean, no question. So we'll see what happens after it shakes out. But the vol's still in the mid-90s, so there's plenty of time to sell puts. It's not like it's going to go away tomorrow. So if it's something that interests you, knock yourself out. But yeah, it does look like somebody is, I don't know if we're going to call them line in the sand puts, but I think somebody would be happy taking the stock like close to 70 and calling it a day. So, and I mean, I think that's one of the things. I don't know if TOSAW is going to talk about it in one of his strategy blocks, but you can still get good companies for really low prices. And if you don't, you get the yield. Like, the secret to selling puts is to be able to take delivery in decent companies. If you want to be able to do it for a long period of time. So, I think that's what this person's doing, albeit in a fairly large size. You know who it probably is? It's probably a SoftBank. They're like, oh, we missed it. Here's another shot. So we'll just sell 10,000 of them and call it a day.
There you go. And it's hard to argue with this guy. It is a juicy vol level. And there's always that delicate dance, right? When a name gets crushed, obviously in the initial blush, puts are bid up to all, high heaven. Everyone's coming in to buy these things. So if you're judicious and you wait a little bit, you could find that moment, that apex of the vol where it seems like the sell-off is just hitting its peak. It's just starting to tap out. That rubber band is stretching and maybe starting to pull the underlying a little bit back. If you can hit it at that kind of key moment where the sell-off has kind of hit its apex, then you can get a really juicy vol level. Of course, there's other downsides to that. That sell-off could just be taking a break and could sell off more, so it's a very difficult dance. But if you can catch it, there's usually a nice vol crush later in the day, even on a big down day like this where vol is exploding. There's a certain moment where the panic sets in. If you can capture that, that could usually be a good way to go. And this guy clearly not scared to pick up some stock down around 71 or so. And certainly not a bad level if you go back a few months. If you go back like a year, yeah, you could do better. But hey, we're in a different time than we were a year ago. We'll come back to these as well. We're going to keep an eye on these. Next up, we got another one that was in our activity out there. Like, guys, you're looking at this one as well today. This is Ppl Corp. This is an energy company in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Things are usually kind of sleepy, but lately they've been popping up on our unusual activity radar, which is kind of interesting. This is the name that was trading, let's see, a year ago, 31, almost $32. And then it kind of took a nice just drubbing from about 35 and change all the way down to 18 and change in the nadir. And then it kind of rallied again. And by our everyone's favorite day, June 8th, it had rallied back up to $30.65. And then it kind of gave it all back down to 25 and change. It kind of hovered around there until now, where it's kind of back up around 28 and change again. So yet another name that has struggled to regain and failed to regain its June 8th high. So put June 8th still in your books, listeners, as the apex for a lot of the middle of the market there. And let's see, what did our Eye of Sauron find today? It found Dees calls to the tune of the Dees 31. So about $2.50 out of the money calls, listeners, going up 5,700 times. Get this, Mr. Rock Lobster. I saw this, and I just had to just shake my head in disgust. This may be the worst market I've seen in any of the prints we've discussed here on the Odd Block. And that's saying something because we've seen a few. The listed market for this, when it went up, Mr. Rock Lobster, for these DS31 calls, was no bid at $5. Just let that sink in. Someone actually disseminated no bid at $5. They wouldn't even put up a nickel bid for these damn things. Isn't that insane?
I think, you know what, when you're a market maker, what's weird now is the electronic marketplace, they can get away with pretty much whatever they
If you
want.
made that market on the floor of the SIBO, the broker would rightly punch you in the face,
He totally would. That would like the old days. And then he would kick you.
Yes,
a couple times.
Yes, rightfully so. I think that market was even illegal. You couldn't be that wide. There were regulations on whiffs. Apparently, those regulations have gone the way of the dodo now in the post-COVID era. No bid. They're not even disseminating a bid, and at $5. That's the kind of markets you used to dream you could make. Yeah, I wish I could be no bid at $5, but no legal entity would allow me to do such a thing. Well, they did today in the Ppl Corp DS31 calls. That's just disgusting, Mr. Rock. All of it. The offer, the bid, disgusting. So these calls went up at 22 cents. I guess that makes them a pick'em. I don't know where the hell that ranks in this absurd market. Let's see. There are earnings coming up. The next cycle is on November 5th, so there is some earnings in this. But yeah, that ridiculous market kind of overshadows all of this. Mr. Rock Lobster, flip a coin. Did they buy these? Did they sell these? What the hell's going on? Do we even care? Does this terrible market obscure all the rest of it, sir? There we go. Are you there? Can you hear me now, sir? We cannot hear you.
I'm here.
There you are. Now I can hear you. You had muted yourself. All right.
No, I honest to goodness, I did not. Honest to goodness.
Well, you're freaking me out by staring at me now, so what do you got for us?
I couldn't even argue with you about these PPL calls because how do you argue about where it is when it's $5 wide?
Yeah, there's no argument. There's nothing really to be said. It's just insanity.
So you're going through all this work to overwrite something for 22 cents. The only thing I can think of is that, these utilities, they're kind of moving, right? Normally you just see people overwrite these, but, this is a DS31 calls for 22 cents. I mean, I doubt if the name could ever get there in 100 years, so I figure it's just an overwrite. But, oh my gosh, not much of a market to speak of, I have to say.
No, pretty atrocious. I don't even know if maybe we'll come back to these just for the absurdity of them, but they're kind of hard to analyze just because it's so much nonsense involved in that. Speaking of coming back to things, Mr. Rock Lobster, you have requested that we review some of your line in the sand puts, so we're going to do just that. We're going to dial back our Wayback Machine to everyone's favorite name. This is Match Group. Of course, they own Match.com and a bunch of other names, including Tinder. Kind of different polar ends of the spectrum there, Match and Tinder. But c'est la vie, they kind of have this segment carved up. Had to be a difficult segment, you would think, given the COVID era. Kind of hard to meet people physically these days, you would think. But hey, c'est la vie. Let's see what we got here. Back on the 28th, we looked at some puts in Match Group. It was about 16,000 of the OC 90 puts going up for 48 cents. That was on the bid. Looks like someone was crushing that. That was opening over there on the NOM, the NASDAQ options market. And it seemed like this guy had pretty good timing because within a couple of sessions, this stock had just exploded to the upside. It was, at the time the stock went up, the trade went up, I should say, the stock was about 109. It was trading 116 within a couple of sessions. So this thing never really threatened the 90 strike. And obviously they're still open, but doesn't seem like it's getting there today either. It's at 110.19 as of the latter portion of the show. So not surprisingly, these puts are still open, Mr. Rock Lobster. Looks like our friend here pocketed a cool about $750,000. Is that what your takeaway is as well, sir?
It is. Hopefully my mic is working, but yes, I believe that is the takeaway. And whoever does Mr. Line in the Sand put seller has a pretty good record. I think everyone's a win so far.
Yeah, pretty much. It's been all love for the Line in the Sand puts. Now let's see if it's all love from you guys as we turn our attention to the listeners. It's Thursday time for the mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the mail block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the mail block. Maybe we should just call it the Uncle Mike block today because it seems like it's kind of dominated by Uncle Mike here. Let's start off. We got coming from our live chat. I recognize this name. He's been in there before. My boy Luigi. I like that handle. I always was more of a fan of Luigi than Mario as well. So there we go. My boy Luigi. He says, I just wanted to say thank you to Uncle Mike for his time the other day on the phone. Great guy. You need to hold on to him, Mark. Well, I will hold on to him with two hands. When he's feeling well, he's not feeling good, I'll let him go a little bit. But when he's feeling well, I will hold on to him. But there you go, Uncle Mike. Sounds like my boy Luigi, one of our many listeners who have taken you up on your offer to call you, I should say, and chat a little bit. What do you say, sir?
I'm always happy to talk to our listeners. I mean, this show is a very big part of me in that a lot of my clients listen to this show, and I've gained a lot of business through the years from this show, and I really love doing it. It's fun to. It doesn't feel like we're talking to the thousands of people that we are every day. It's just like the three of us kind of arguing about options every day, but it's fun, and it is nice to hear from listeners on the other side of things. So it was a pleasure talking with you as well, Luigi.
Oh, in case you feel bad, Mr. Rock Lobster, he added, oh, and the lobster is okay, too.
Oh, really?
He didn't want you feeling left out. So there you go. A little bit of lobster love. And Mr. Luigi, if you could see Andrew the way I could now, maybe you would change that opinion. He's got interesting fashion choices, let's just say. Looks like a good Mainer over there. All right, next up, we got someone chiming in. What you were saying earlier, Uncle Mike, you were chatting about how, in your intro there, how the market doesn't really care about the virus anymore. It appears to be over. It's all about the stimulus now. Stat Krems chimed in saying, it depends. If we go back into lockdowns, hold on. If the numbers drift or get a little worse, markets won't care. Just my humble opinion. So there you go, Mr. Uncle Mike. It sounds like he's half agreeing with you, sir. What do you say?
Well, I half agree with him. No, just kidding. If we do go back into lockdowns and the death rate, and we actually do have to get the millions of ventilators back out, because initially we were preparing for a lot worse than what actually has happened in that we had that giant medical aircraft carrier thing go around New York City. We had all the extra hospital beds. I think Chicago even took out McCormick Place to become like a second hospital. If we get to the point where we need those things, and yes, I agree that Apple and Amazon aren't going to hold up the market. So I would agree with your half agreement.
There you go. We're all in half agreement with each other, and we half hate each other. So it works out well. It's a key to a good market. All right, Mr. Rock Lobster, as you recall, we very infamously, a couple of weeks ago, actually, it was about a month ago. It was in September. We put out a poll because people were talking about GameStop and also Bed Bath & Beyond. So we put out a fun flash poll to our audience. Said, gun to your head, you had to buy either GameStop or Bed Bath & Beyond right now. Which would you choose? You and I were firmly on the side of Bed Bath & Beyond. Our audience, not so much. They went about 83% in favor of GameStop, which we were stunned at. It seemed like one was circling the bowl and one was at least had a business model maybe and a clear path forward. Maybe not the best, but they had something. Then, of course, a few weeks later, the numbers came out for Bed Bath & Beyond. They blew the doors off. And so it seemed like we were even more correct. And yet now all this drama with GameStop. And so we have a listener comment here. This comes from, Coffee Sucks. This guy, this sounds familiar. He's been listening to a lot of our shows of late in the live chat. Coffee Sucks says, I listened to a rebroadcast yesterday where you guys mentioned GameStop briefly. This was, I think, Monday's show where we were talking because GameStop was just in the blush, and we knew something had happened with Microsoft, but we had just broken. We didn't know what it was. He says, I believe your analysis was a bit off the mark. Here's an article for a bit of the context of that view, and it pretty much just breaks down what's going on with this. Of course, we've learned since then, since that show, that Microsoft and GameStop have entered into effectively a partnership. But the interesting part of that is, they're going to help them with, Surface tablets in the stores and things like that are kind of, not a big deal. I think the interesting thing and the material thing for GameStop investors is GameStop and Microsoft are going to share in the customer acquisition and the lifetime revenue value of each gamer that effectively Microsoft, or I should say GameStop, brings into the Xbox ecosystems. There's an analyst here pointing out so that they sell a $15 monthly Xbox Game Pass through GameStop. GameStop's going to take a piece of that, and they're going to get it for the lifetime revenue of that customer. So that actually is a big deal for GameStop, particularly in this era now. We got new consoles coming out. You got PS5, you got the Xbox, One X or whatever the hell it's called, the new one. And a lot of these also have a digital edition. So it seemed like the console manufacturers were just kind of giving a big FU to GameStop, because if you buy that digital edition, you're never going to GameStop again. You're effectively only buying through their console stores on Microsoft or on PlayStation. It seemed like that might be the death knell. Another reason why myself and others were not exactly bullish on GameStop. But this partnership maybe turns that around. So people have speculated maybe Sony's going to come in and do something similar. Because it also, if you think about it, it also benefits these major console manufacturers to have a retail presence that pushes their hardware. That's just a good thing. So this does make sense. And I'm with you here. What was it? Coffee Sucks. That this does maybe change the narrative on GameStop. So maybe, I guess I'm still a little more bullish GameStop than I was. Maybe not at these price levels. The movement has been happening. But Mr. Rock Lobster, as Coffee Sucks wants to know, does this change your outlook at all, sir?
Well, now let's just say like a couple things here, okay? Basically, Microsoft came in with a gigantic company and threw GameStop a lifeline, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
So,
they saved
which was not, when we did the original analysis, wasn't there. Okay, now though, that being said, the fact that GameStop might become a de facto retail outlet for Microsoft so they could maybe challenge Apple more directly on retail and stuff like that. I mean, this is like Microsoft putting like the camel, sticking their nose under the tent kind of thing, right? They're starting with this little deal, but all of a sudden GameStop has all these retail locations, and it's just one more step for Microsoft if they wanted to. So is it good for GameStop? 100%. So I will say yes. I do not expect Microsoft to get into or be interested remotely in retail, but they are. And the CEO of Microsoft has probably engineered one of the great corporate turnarounds in history, essentially taking the stock from $20 to $220 since he became CEO. So the guy is really smart. Probably one of the most underrated CEOs in the U.S., to be honest. So now that they're on it, I would say the whole thing for GameStop has changed. So I can certainly admit that I'm wrong, but it took Microsoft and a $1.5 trillion company to slap us upside the head, Mr. Longo.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. But
yes.
I will admit now. And by the way, Bed Bath & Beyond has doubled in price since the show.
Yeah, I still like Bed Bath & Beyond. Yes, I think initially and certainly at the time of that poll, we were correct. I don't think there's any arguing that. Maybe now the narrative, let's see, GameStop is at about exactly a 14 right now, and Bed Bath & Beyond is at about 24.5. Yeah, so a little bit of a premium out there in Bed Bath. And this does change the game, and what does that mean now for like Nintendo and Sony? They want to sell stuff through these stores, but GameStop has a piece of the Xbox action, so they have obviously more of a vested interest. So that's going to be interesting to see how all of that works. Maybe Nintendo's like, we don't care. We're selling enough Switches. We don't need your pennies, GameStop. Either way, it's interesting stuff to be seen, and certainly a hotter. We kind of did that poll as a joke. We didn't think anyone really cared that much about either of these companies. It turns out you guys care a whole heck of a lot, particularly about GameStop. So yes, mea culpa for us. Maybe we were a little bit too mocking of these names out there that you guys clearly are very interested in. As we keep on rolling into our final segment, it is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, let's get to it. Around the block portion of the show. We tell you what we're watching until we all can gather here together on Monday for the next episode of the show. I mentioned we're back hot and heavy in the earnings season. Let's look at a couple here that are kind of interesting. Our friends over there in Ally Land, Ally Invest, popping off tomorrow before the bell. They are pricing in a whopping $1.03. They're trading $27.39. In the past, they've moved about $1. So pretty much in line with what they've offered there in the past. City, they're on the 20th here before the bell. They're trading at $19.13. They were pricing in about $1.70. In the past, they've moved 60 cents. So a little bit of extra juice out there. Let's see any other interesting ones. There's a huge rash of these on the website, listeners. You guys can go up there for yourselves and find them. IBM on the 19th. After the bell, they were trading $80.15. They're pricing in $3.76. In the past, they've moved 4.25. Actually, no, I'm sorry, reverse that. They're pricing in 4.25. In the past, they moved $3.76. So actually a little bit of extra juice in IBM land, which is kind of interesting. And as we've seen over the last couple of cycles, perhaps not the wisest move. But I guess we'll find out here. There's tons of tickers here. I can spend the rest of the show and many more talking about them. You, of course, can go over to theoptionsinsider.com for yourselves and begin your journey there. A lot of great free data. You can't argue with the price. Let's go back around the horn. The guy everyone loves to love these days, a.k.a. Uncle Mike. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what are you watching for the rest of this week into the weekend?
Just watching the S&P in that 3,500. We're below that right now. Lows of the day right now are 34.40. So we're kind of in the no man's land from a key number perspective, but just continuing to watch that. Also wanting to watch the news. Of course, there can be crazy developments at any point in time. Who knows? Maybe Biden will take a turn getting the coronavirus. Not that I wish that upon anybody, but you never know. So watching news and watching to see what's going on with not only the Supreme Court, the Senate, going through the Supreme Court proceedings, but seeing how fast it gets done, because if it does get done fast enough, then they're going to start talking about stimulus checks again. So that is what I'm watching.
That would certainly be one of the things that could probably derail his campaign the fastest, is if Biden came down with a nasty case of coronavirus leading into the final weeks of this. So yeah, that's why his campaign is locking him down and keeping him distant from everyone out there. They can't afford something like that in the final couple of weeks. Mr. Rock Lobster, what do you keep an eye on for the rest of this week until we can at least chat tomorrow again on Volatility Views, sir?
I'm just mostly I think we'll be back at 3,500 before the end of the day. And if this keeps up, VIX will be unchanged. And that's the verdict on the coronavirus, at least for today. I think that would be the most significant thing. That, hey, the market has finally said we're stuck with it. We have to figure out a way to live with it. And that, God forbid somebody that's really sick gets it, but we can treat everybody else. And that's the way right now it seems to be looking. The only thing I'd say is all the corona stocks like Nautilus and Zoom and Peloton, all the ones where everybody's just going to flock to all that stuff, doing pretty well today. They've been green all day and they really haven't given it up. So, and set number 2, I'm looking at all the drug stocks and all the treatment providers. They've been sold off a little recently, so see if they catch a little. They catch a little bit of the wind. Let's see if they do.
Unfortunately, there's no more wind for us to catch. That music means we're done. But if you need more in your ear holes, do not fret. We'll be back in exactly, about 23 minutes, or 27 minutes, I should say, with all things TWIFO, talking about all things futures options. If you're listening live, stay tuned. We'll pump some fun stuff in there in between. We'll be back with some great special guests to talk all things TWIFO and a lot more. But before we go, let's go back around the horn. By the way, you're right, Mr. Rock Lobster. I neglected to mention that we are turning around, it seems like, a little bit in the markets there. S&P only off about 1/3% or so now. Dow getting close to unched, and the NASDAQ well shy of that 1% level. So maybe we will see a resurgence towards the end of the day. It would not surprise me. Nothing surprises me here in 2020. Let's go back around the horn the way we came. Mr. Uncle Mike, we'll start with you. If folks want to join my boy Luigi and call you up and chat with you, sir, where should they go? What should they do?
stcharleswealth.com if you are interested in a financial advisor who doesn't just blow stuff up or blow smoke at you and say, I don't think the election's going to be a big deal. Just buy and hold. I'm actively doing much hedging for clients right now. Not every client, just everyone has different needs. But if you're interested in hedging for the election in some way, shape, or form, reach out to me, stcharleswealth.com.
Call up a financial advisor who can actually do stuff. Hit them up. stcharleswealth.com is the place to go. And Mr. Rocklops, if they want to learn how to do stuff for themselves, where should they go? What should they do?
Come to optionpit.com. Look at our memberships page. We have, if you want trade ideas, you want education, you want a combination of both. If you want to see me, like Longo see me right now in my lumberjack, flannel shirts I wear all the time, come on over to optionpit.com and we'll put some learning on. We've been around for 10 years now, and there's got to be some kind of reason why.
There's got to be some reason why. Find out for yourselves. Maybe you just want to check out his fancy fashion choices. Trust me, you don't want to miss them, listeners. OptionPit.com is the place to go. And on behalf of the rockingest of lobsters and the unklest of Mikes, and indeed myself, I want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for sending in your questions, for listening live, for voting for us, and for reviewing us on all the different platforms out there. I want to thank all of you out there for doing that. We'll see you back in about half an hour, a little bit less now, for TWIFO, and then back again tomorrow, hot at you, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for Volatility Views. Then it all kicks off again on Monday with another episode of the Option Block.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.